Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the Lauria. This is the last steel battleship we got to take a look at. Before I can really rate everything, I think I'll re-look at the Bourgogne tomorrow and just rate all of these battleships in order. But Laria is very strong. It is also the most recent tier 10 steel battleship available. And if you want to know what this ship does, in one salvo, this is it. Sap shells that overmatch most cruisers. These are 457s. They have a very high alpha damage. If you get good dispersion, yeah, you can just get 35k into Puerto Rico there. Oh, and by the way, we have excellent concealment, really good speed, and you can see from the turret angles here, we actually don't have to go very broadside to shoot all of these guns. The reload is pretty good here as well. You do have a citadel, but this ship is very low in the water. It's quite small, and I've been surprised at how much tanking this ship can actually deal with. It's kind of the opposite of a GK. You guys know how I dislike the German battleship. We're a tank, we're this brawling battleship, and then we have this giant tumor of a superstructure that we can get farmed through very easily. Laria is pretty much the opposite. You have a very small superstructure, and as long as there's not overmatch, which this Satsuma could hurt us pretty badly, and a bunch of HE spam, we can get a ton of potential damage and tank really well for our team. I got up over 5 million potential damage in one of these games I have to show for you today. So this is a very strong ship. This is going to be one of the best options for a steel battleship that you can get. Personally, I'm going to take a Bourgogne over this, but this is a very close second. I'm going to talk more about the comparisons between these ships in tomorrow's video, of course, but for now, we're going to take a look at the Lauria. Again, this sap is very good. It's a little weird to fire sometimes. Every once in a while, we get some dud salvos where I'll do some full pens and they don't really full pen damage people. It's kind of odd. But that said, it is very powerful still, and especially because you can't really angle to this. Not only does it overmatch 30 millimeters of armor, but SAP has the ultimate in improved pen angles, right? It's like Des Moines AP on steroids even, is what SAP is. Of course, you're not going to be citadeling much. You can only really citadel things like a Smolensk, Colbert. I think a Minotaur you can just barely citadel as well with this sap, but you're not going to pen through into heavier cruiser citadels, for example. That's where you got to swap to the AP. But this sap is just so good. Look at this. Angled targets, it's still going to do like 12, 13k there, and better dispersion, less saturated. It's going to be very strong. These secondaries are not worth speccing into, even though they are sap secondaries. They don't have nearly enough DPM, and they don't have any sort of improved dispersion to them, so really not worthwhile using. Lauria is also a ship that really wants to play at mid-range. You're going to notice that a lot in this game. I'm going to be trying to play around 15 kilometers away from the enemy. A little closer at times, certainly, and when I can push, I will certainly do so, but the idea here is we want to be going dark in between our salvos. Even though our reload is pretty quick, it's really nice to just have that security and safety of firing, but then able to go dark, able to turn away, all that good stuff. Pretty nice blind shot there on the Fletcher to take him out here. Dispersion-wise, Laria is pretty good. It's not spectacular, I would say, but it is pretty good, and SAP certainly helps you to feel a little bit better. That said, you do want to be using the armor piercing. In fact, here I should have had armor piercing. I don't know why I didn't swap to it earlier. I could see this thunder on the minimap in the Cyclone before I could even get within the 8-kilometer spotting range, and I wasted a sap salvo into him there. We got okay damage, but the AP could have dev struck him there potentially, because the AP here is actually pretty good, and there's been some games where I've actually focused on that a little bit more. This game certainly showing off the power of the sap for sure, but that AP is certainly an ammo type you should be using on this ship. I really wish the gun feeder or expert loader upgrades had the improvements that the American special commanders do, because that is just so handy to be able to swap between different ammo types rather quickly. I love it. It's really nice in the American ships, and I kind of miss it on a lot of the other nations, but here we do at least win the game and get ourselves a fireproof. It's a surprisingly tanky ship. You can deal with a lot. Mainly due to the speed and concealment, you can disengage pretty well. As for the AP here, Broadside Thunderer waiting. I got so greedy for this, I actually ate this torpedo that was spotted for like 5 minutes. But pretty decent salvo, 30k into him with the Citadel. That's similar to that Puerto Rico salvo, of course, but here we're actually landing a Citadel into the Thunderer. And the sap can do that much damage, and so that's where I really want to be shooting sap, unless I know I can Citadel the enemy. That's really the idea behind most sap ships in this game. Anytime you can Citadel the enemy, that's where you want to possibly using AP. There's still some times where you want to be shooting sap, even if you can potentially Citadel with AP. But for the most part, that's the idea if you haven't played any of these sap ships before, especially the battleships, but also the cruisers too. Venice certainly comes to mind as one where I don't really shoot much AP out of it unless I know I can get Citadels, because the sap is just going to do more damage. It's got slightly higher alpha damage, and it's just more consistent because we're not getting those overpens. And that's very, very powerful. We always have a lot of overpens in most battleship games, of course, especially with higher calibers like Laria does have. So just having no possibility of getting an overpen is extremely important, not to mention the improved pen angles. Although we will get trolled on dispersion from time to time, where this Monty, who's pretty broadside, is just not really going to take much damage from us. Still, we're getting some good damage here. We're not even 5 minutes into this game and we nearly have 100k, but still, there are going to be situations where this ship is going to troll you. It is a battleship after all, so don't think of this as the almighty, super powerful sniper, perfect dispersion all the time. It can have dud salvos, and it will troll you at times, but you should be in positions where you're not fully committed into the enemy team, where you need that salvo to dev strike someone or do a ton of damage in order for you to live. That's really important. You're not fully committed in such a way. That's where you want to be playing the Laria, at that 15 or so kilometers away from the enemy, and that way you can go dark, you can maneuver, you can use your speed and concealment to get the drop on the enemy. Also, here we have a Nakamov and AP salvo. Had to include that, that's just so satisfying. 4 Citadels into this game feels pretty nice. Laria, of course, can do some work with that AP, although for the most part, you will be shooting sap out of this ship. It's just too consistent. It's too good, I think, to ignore for the most part. And you can see here, even a broadside Monty takes around 13 or 14k from just 3 sap pens. So you can do a lot of damage still, even into broadsides with that sap. You managed to win this game, nearly 200k damage. On to the next match here, I want to talk about positioning your Laria and the ability to swap flanks and to maneuver around the map quickly. This is something that the Bourgogne also does very well, and if we're going to be looking at Bourgogne and Laria, they both have really good speed, maneuverability, detection. They also are both really pretty good at dealing with angled targets. Bourgogne AG, sap here on the Laria. You notice here I got a little greedy for the AP onto that Azuma. Didn't do too much damage to him, but as soon as he starts to angle here, I remember that I should probably be shooting sap, first of all. And then he's going to be angled, and we have our sap salvo ready. And since it's an Azuma, which is unfortunately a very big tier 9 cruiser with not very much armor, it means we're going to do some really good damage with sap. 15k there is a pretty good salvo, although 5 full pens of sap might be able to do a little bit more than that. I think theoretically a full pen is like 5,000 damage-ish, somewhere in there, so 25k if we didn't hit saturated sections or something like that. But it's important to know you're really quick to maneuver around and you're very stealthy, so you can surprise a lot of people. So in this game, I noticed that we were losing our 9-10 flank, and if you're in a ship like a Vermont, I mean, that's an extreme example, of course, but if you're in a ship like Vermont, you're not moving around the map very quickly. But if you get something like the Laria, Bourgogne, these kinds of things, they can actually maneuver around the map and deal with the enemy pushes as they come, and do a really, really good job of flanking, but also just supporting your teammates where they need it, if you can recognize those positions. It's pretty difficult to always know where you need to be. I don't do it all the time very well. And in fact, in this game, I'm going to make a massive mistake in this game that will almost be our doom in this game. But for now, we do have that Azuma still to worry about. And I'm not going to show you my build at the end, but I'm going to let you know I have propulsion mod. And this is the reason I have propulsion mod. We're at 15 kilometers away from a heavy cruiser, and we're going to do a little bit of speed juking. It's very difficult and annoying to deal damage to a Laria at these ranges, especially if they're playing with their speed, their throttle, as well as their rudder. You can see here, we just stop enough to dodge that salvo, and this ship is so low in the water that even a good, properly aimed salvo like that would have hit most battleships on the bow. But our bow is just so little, right? It's almost like the old Petro effect. I mean, it's still the current Petro where that ship is just so low in the water, it's hard to hit sometimes. But Laria is as well, especially in the back, but also in the front. It is just comically small. So you have to hit it in the midsection where the superstructure is, or even things like cruiser dispersion can cause you to miss entire salvos and do very, very little damage to this ship. So even though the armor doesn't look amazing, 32 mil most places, and we have an above water citadel, of course, it's difficult to deal with this ship. It can be very, very annoying. I'm speaking from experience fighting these things, but also I know that dealing with the Laria in that situation is quite difficult. Speeding up, we do manage to catch the enemy team off guard here a little bit. Swapped over to the AP just in case. We actually got enough of a broadside, and it's close on this cruiser here. It's very close, but we do get some bounces and torp protection hits. So not the most damage, but it's all right. We get our Confederate. If you have Cincinnati, you want to be running them on basically every single Italian ship. They all have the same weaknesses of pretty much poor range. You always want more range out of these things, and reload's just always nice with the Confederate, of course. But the range upgrade when you get a kill is very, very powerful. At least Laria here, we do get the spotter plane, which is nice, and decent base range with very good concealment, so it's still pretty comfortable to play. Much more so than, let's say, Colombo is, with poor concealment and terrible base range. It's always that difference between the concealment and the gun range that kind of determines how comfortable a ship can be to play. But you still do want to run Cincinnati if you can. But here's where I'm making crucial mistakes, okay? I said I was going to make a massive mistake in this game, and it was not pushing, and it results in our Iowa dying. This game is very, very, very close on a knife edge, and I have the most HP left out of my team, and I was hiding behind that island just taking pot shots. I did not realize that I needed to push even more. I'd already done some pushing on the 9-10 line, thought I'd take a little breather, but I didn't realize that this game is almost over, and I needed to apply more pressure before our Iowa died. We're still in this. We're still in this, though, as a team. We get our kill there, so we get a little more range. Petro's low. This, whatever this cruiser is, I don't even know how to pronounce it, is low. And so is the Izumo. They're all low. Vampire 2 in the A-cap there, also very low. Our teammate manages to finish off Petro. Very, very good. This is a potential winning game, right? And you can see how it's so close. It wouldn't have been as close if I had pushed earlier, right? If I'd kept our Iowa alive, if our Iowa was here to push around, not only would we have more guns able to help out, we also would have those points back. And we might need those guns to help out if we get dispersion like that again. It's not always the best dispersion, right? It's not always the best dispersion. It's unfortunate that this is cropping up in such a close game at such a close range. You know, at longer ranges, sure, dispersion, but really? Really? That's what you're gonna give me, Laria? Especially when this ship is supposed to be accurate, right? And it is, and it does smash people. Don't forget about that first salvo into that Puerto Rico. SAP 35k, right? We're outspotting him, that kind of thing. It's silly, but it can troll you, this ship. It certainly can troll you. There we go. We finally take him out, get ourselves a high caliber. We should catch up to this Izumo, hopefully before our Moskva dies. You can see how close this is actually getting. And I'm going to see if there is a shot on the Vampire, but really I just got to finish this Izumo. It's important that he dies before our Moskva does. And there you have it. 48 seconds left on the clock here, and the enemy team has 3 caps to our 1, and our Moskva still ends up going down. So we lose on points. Notice how if our Iowa was still alive, we probably would have been tied on points or very close. So there you go. I lost this game because I did not recognize I needed to push and help my teammates. But that is a decent game out of the Laria still, even though it is a loss. It shows you that you do have the opportunity to clutch up and carry with the Laria. Positioning is difficult with this ship because it does have low HP. If you overcommit, you do just die in this thing. But if you stay angled and if you stay at the right ranges, you can tank a ton of damage, and that's what this game is. I said 5 million potential damage. That is a lot, especially in a ship like this one where it's not the Kremlin type of ship, right? Where it's just got a stupid amount of HP and armor, no superstructure, fast damage controls, that kind of thing. But we're still going to do it here. Mostly because the enemy team is AP-focused ships. You're going to notice that we don't have to deal with a lot of HE spam, and we don't have to deal with a lot of overmatch. But still, 5 mil potential damage is no joke, even in a game like this one. As you can see, we are playing on the flank here, and that's where I really want to be playing this ship. Any sort of fast, stealthy battleship that has good punishing power, I want to be playing on the flank, because either we're going to help our team push through this flank and secure the A cap and be able to actually keep up with the enemies as they're trying to flee. We also have the opportunity to just disengage. Once we have control of the A cap, and let's say they start to kite really well, there's not really much for me to do as far as taking them out. It would be more damaging to our team or myself to actually follow them through with that kiting position. I can just disengage with my good concealment and use my speed to get back to the other flank where maybe the enemy team is pushing. That's really, really important. If I was playing I'm going to use it again, Vermont. Okay, I love the Vermont too. It's very satisfying with those giant salvos, but you can't play like this in a Vermont. You have to always consider where you are on the map. You can't really go to the flanks unless you really trust your other flank to actually win or stall out very well. Because there's no way you're repositioning to deal with an enemy push from the other side of the map. And that's pretty much exactly what's happened in this game. The enemy team has kited us back, and there's not really much we can do to finish a lot of these guys off. Sure, they're showing broadside, but I don't want to fully commit to a push here. So we're going to angle for now, try and take this Monty out. To be fair, he's making a pretty massive mistake. But we should be considering to use our speed to deal with the enemy Ohio that's pushing, also the Des Moines as well, trying to get more control over the B cap. There's no way they're going to push back into us and take A at this point, so there's not really anything I should be doing here. In fact, looking back on this game now, even though we're going to have an excellent job here of dealing with the enemy salvos from the Montana, both Monties here, we're going to tank a ton of damage here and do some pretty good spotting. Notice we're actually up to 50,000 spotting damage in this one. I probably should have rotated sooner now that I'm looking at this. See, more mistakes. You can always analyze your games and figure out what you did wrong afterwards. Not good to dwell on that or kick yourself about it all the time, but it is interesting. We still will have a good game here, but I wonder if we could have won this one if I had actually pushed back towards the Ohio and dealt with him and prevented our team from getting, well, you can see how we're boxed into really a quarter of the map. The enemy head team has 3/4 of the map under their control. We only have a quarter. Typically, that's not going to end too well for you. We do manage to kill off the cruiser. Poor tier 8 cruiser stuck in this game. That's very, very difficult to deal with tier 10s, especially one like Lauria that has insane concealment and the overmatching sap. Very, very difficult for him. But we do manage to take him out, and that gets us our range upgrade, which is very handy. And already, you notice, we're up to 3.5 million potential damage. That's a pretty good game out of a tanky battleship already. And yet with Laria here, we still have 3 heals left, half our HP. We're feeling pretty confident to just stand here and tank. Notice I am still using propulsion mod to deal with a lot of the incoming salvos. It's such a small superstructure to hit, and like I already mentioned, the extremities of your ship, well, they're pretty long. They're just so low in the water. It's very difficult to deal damage to this ship when it's angled and moving its superstructure around like we are. The acceleration is just really impressive with this ship. It's not anything like a Minotaur or something like that, but it's more than enough playing at 15, 16 kilometers to dodge most salvos coming in at you. There you can see. He hit our stern and got a full pen, that's fine, but a lot of the time, Battleship Dispersion is going to cause those to miss, and you can see how we just take very, very little damage. Up to 4 million potential damage at this point. The torpedoes around us are certainly helping inflate that number. But we do take one, and that is going to be difficult. I am pushing at this point. I already mentioned that I probably should have pushed earlier, rotated earlier. Made it a little difficult for myself waiting as long as I did. All the torpedoes coming in for us. We have to get into the B cap. There's nothing we can really do other than push right now. That is the unfortunate side about stalling so long in the A cap like I did with my teammates there, is that they're on 900 points. We just have to send it in. But we do send it in rather well. This Des Moines is taking some risks, dealing with a Laria like this, of course, with that Overmatch sap. Can do some pretty nasty damage. And even though he was on lower HP, sometimes you miss, like on that cruiser last game. But the sap does come through for us. And I'm going to try and go dark here. I'm going to try and go dark because the Ohio isn't in our spotting range and the DD is in his smoke. So maybe I can stall this cap. Maybe I can wait until the DD is forced to leave his smoke. And there come the torpedoes. So unfortunately, we do not live this one. Our dying last gasp salvo actually gets 4 hits on that DD. So pretty decent final stand. That's 5.2 million potential damage. Little rounding there, but 5.2 million. That's pretty good out of a Laria. So it's pretty tanky. It's very fast. The guns are fairly reliable. Overmatch sap is pretty disgusting, of course. And I like this ship. I really think it's a strong tier 10 battleship. Probably overpowered if you're getting good dispersion out of it. Very, very overpowered. But I think for me, I got enough of those wonky salvos that it doesn't feel outright OP. Although it's not very fun to fight. Dealing with this ship is not very enjoyable. It's one of those type of ships where it's very difficult to deal with this thing. As for the build here on the Laria, we certainly want to be playing to this ship's strengths, which are already quite immense. But as you can see, you can get your concealment down to 12.3, which is kind of insane, to be honest with you, for a ship with these kind of guns. It feels like we're getting a lot of overmatching, very powerful, accurate guns on ships that are faster than a lot of cruisers, that also have the concealment of a lot of cruisers. Not sure about that design direction, but as far as getting Laria, it means it's very, very powerful. And the build I'm running with looks like this. I think Brisk is excellent on a ship like this. I think you also want Grease the Gears. Even though the turret traverse is pretty quick, it's just very nice to be able to, on a fast ship like this, also have turrets that can move reasonably well. The gun feeder here, of course, much like those American battleships, we get the improved one on Cincinnati. So if you do have Cincinnati, not only are you getting the range and potential reload buffs and consumables here, but also gun feeder. It's just so important. Cincinnati fixes every Italian ship. It feels like. The problems with the Italian ships: lacking range, lacking the ability to swap shells rather quickly, relying on swapping shells all the time, reload feeling bad, maybe not on Laria. Like, all these things. Cincinnati's just like, hey, I'm here. It feels a little OP for this commander, even though this commander is not nearly as powerful as like a Kuznetsov, but so many Italian ships have so many weaknesses, right? That you kind of need this guy on everything. Not sure why he's on my Regulo. Maybe I was trying to make that work a while ago. But yeah, definitely run him on your Laria if you have him. Furious, I have really been enjoying a lot, especially on these ships where I know I'm not tanking. I'm not trying to just full send it into people. I'm not trying to play that role. So therefore, I don't get as much value out of fire prevention. When I'm playing that, trying to stay in concealment, 12.3 to 15 kilometers is where I want to be. So it's been nice to have the extra reload. For now, that is the build that I am running. As far as equipment goes, yeah, propulsion mod. Other than that, very, very standard build on this thing. You can do a lot of different things with it. The only thing I don't recommend is going with a secondary build. Not worth it. Reload time is far too long. Accuracy is not good enough as well on these secondary guns. Your AA is also quite bad because, well, Italy suffers with you. Italy suffers in a lot of ways, but yeah, 4.6 kilometer firing range. I mean, let's be honest here. At this tier, your AA is barely going to spool up to shoot before the strike is activated and the planes are immune. It's pretty rough. Armor layout wise, yeah, 32. It's a lot of overmatch. HE shells are going to hurt you, but you keep it angled to ships that can't overmatch you. It's pretty difficult to deal with at range. At closer ranges, though, when you're actually able to hit this thing, well, look at these angled 50 mil plates. That's just asking to get full penned by battleships. So doesn't matter forwards, backwards, kiting, pushing. You just are exposing that at closer ranges, and yeah, you want to be hitting here. But at longer ranges, that prop mod allows you to kind of slide around a little bit, as you saw, and avoid a lot of incoming damage. As well as the Citadel, right? So you just have to hit smokestacks. Superstructure area. This is where you have to deal damage to this ship. Otherwise, you're not doing much back here or up here. It's just, I mean, it's comically low in the water, isn't it? Like, look at that, man. It looks like a stiff breeze is gonna put a wave over this. Again, it's extremes, but look at Vermont in comparison. What is that, like 4 times the height? It's pretty funny, right? It's pretty funny. Yeah, this thing's pretty insane. Personally, I still would take Bourgogne, but I'm gonna have to explain that in tomorrow's video, so look forward to that. But I hope you guys enjoyed these looks at the steel battleships. Maybe take a little break from doing this sort of thing and then come back for the steel cruisers or the steel DDs, something like that. Or maybe the coal ships, we'll see. But I think doing these kind of ranking comparisons can give you an idea of the order in which I would get these ships. If I had to grind again, if I had the resources and didn't have these ships on my accounts, I'll just give you my order in which I would like to buy these things. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.